Love stories often come with grand gestures, dramatic confessions, and tearful goodbyes. But sometimes, love ends in silence. It's not a bomb going off, but a whisper fading into the background of everyday life. This is the story of how I woke up one morning to find my wife gone, not kidnapped, not missing, but simply gone. And how, in that quiet departure, I discovered wounds I never knew existed and betrayals I had overlooked. My name is Ethan Lawson. I never imagined that I would begin a chapter of my life like this, with an empty house and a letter that turned my world upside down. That morning started like any other. I woke up to the soft hum of the coffee maker and the familiar warmth of the sun creeping through the curtains. I reached out to her side of the bed and felt nothing but cold sheets. At first, I thought she was just in the shower or maybe out for an early morning walk. But as I moved through the house, I noticed the little signs, the empty coffee mug, her slippers by the door, and finally, the empty space in the wardrobe where her clothes used to be. The silence was deafening. Then I saw the letter on the dining table, sealed in an envelope, just my name on the front. Ethan. My hands trembled as I opened it. The pages were filled with words I never expected, words that revealed the wounds she had carried quietly, the betrayals I had never seen. In those pages, she described how she had felt invisible, how her dreams had been sidelined, and how, over time, her love had quietly faded. Reading her words, I felt a mix of regret and clarity. Regret for the times I had been blind, and clarity for the journey ahead. That morning, I realized that her departure was not just an end, but also a beginning. A chance for me to truly see, to grow, and to find a version of myself that I had forgotten. When people talk about betrayal, they describe fire, anger, shouting, chaos. Mine wasn't fire. Mine was ice. Cold, slow, and precise. After I finished the letter, after the numbness settled into my bones, something sharp and quietly furious woke up inside me. For the first time in 7 years, I saw my marriage clearly, not as a partnership, but as a slow bleeding I had mistaken for love. You'll understand this better as I tell the story, but I'll say it now without shame. Her leaving cracked me open, but it also awakened a version of me she never expected. A quieter and wiser man. A man capable of a comeback so subtle she never saw it coming. But before the comeback, there was the truth. And the truth was this: I had missed the signs not because they were invisible, but because I had stopped paying attention. Looking back now, victory in my voice and steadiness in my chest, I can acknowledge my part. I wasn't perfect. I was distant at times, buried in work, assuming stability meant happiness. But nothing, absolutely nothing, justified the way she left. Not the silence nor the secrets. Not the months, maybe years of planning her exit. Because she didn't just walk out. She prepared her escape like someone wiping fingerprints from a crime scene. The morning after she left, I noticed it, the bank account almost empty. The bills in her name paid ahead for 6 months. Her social media accounts deleted. Her mother suddenly unreachable. Her wedding ring left on the counter as if it never meant anything. That wasn't heartbreak. That was strategy. Her letter had been the emotional explanation. But her preparation, that was the betrayal. And betrayal does something to a person, it sharpens you. That I didn't shout. I didn't chase her. I didn't embarrass myself with desperate calls or messages. Instead, I took a long, slow breath and said to myself, if she wants me out of her story, I'll write mine better. And here's the thing, while she thought she had escaped quietly, she forgot one truth. I listen more than I speak. And I remember more than I react. In those first few days, every memory returned like puzzle pieces assembling themselves. The late nights she brushed off as girl time. The abrupt change in her passwords. The coldness in her touch months before she left. The sudden interest in personal independence. The fake smiles. The rehearsed excuses. She had been leaving me long before she walked out. And the more I realized that, the more one thought settled in my mind: if she thinks she left me broken, she has no idea who I really am. Because yes, she hurt me. But she also freed me. And the man I became after that morning, calm, calculating, grounded, became the architect of a comeback she never expected. A comeback built not on shouting, threats, or revenge, but on success, clarity, and the quiet satisfaction of watching someone who left me regret it without me lifting a finger. The day she left wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of the chapter where I became someone she could never break again. When someone leaves you suddenly, they always assume one thing: that you're too shocked to think clearly. They rely on your heartbreak to cloud your judgment. They expect you to collapse, to beg, to drown in confusion. She thought I would do the same. She didn't know me. Because the morning after she left, after the numbness faded and the anger sharpened into something cold and steady, I did something simple, but powerful. I paid attention. To everything. I started with her letter. Not the emotional paragraphs, the practical contradictions. Every wound she described was real. But there were pieces missing, little gaps she didn't expect me to notice. Like how she claimed she needed space to breathe, yet managed to transfer money out of our joint account 3 days before leaving. Or how she felt trapped in routine, but had somehow found the courage and time to plan a new apartment lease. People don't do that when they're suffocating. They do that when they're preparing for a strategic exit. I wasn't angry. Not anymore. I was awake. That's when I remembered something her best friend once said, months before the cracks became obvious. You know how she is. She hates starting over unless she's sure she has a soft place to land. At the time, I'd laughed it off. Now, I heard it differently. So I followed the trail she didn't think I'd see. Not through her mother. Not through her deleted accounts. Through her best friend, Clara. Clara had always been terrible at keeping secrets, especially when she felt guilty. All it took was a simple text: "We should talk." She replied within 3 minutes. We met at a cafe near the office. She looked nervous, eyes darting around, stirring her coffee like she was trying to drown her conscience in it. I didn't pressure her. I didn't interrogate her. I just sat back and let silence do its work. Silence makes the guilty uncomfortable. Sure enough, after 10 minutes, she cracked. "Ethan. I didn't know she'd leave like that. I swear." She started. I said nothing. She kept talking. She told me she needed time. She told me you'd understand eventually. She said it wasn't cheating, it was just emotional support. That was her phrase. My wife never used that phrase unless it applied to someone she was invested in. I leaned back, letting the truth sink in, not with shock, but with the cold acceptance of someone who already suspected. "Who is he?" I asked calmly. Clara's shoulders slumped. She looked down at her hands, voice barely audible. "A coworker. She said he made her feel alive again. She said she tried to tell you, but you never listened." And there it was. The missing piece. Not because I didn't know it, deep down, I always suspected. But because hearing it out loud confirmed something that instantly changed the direction of my comeback, she didn't just leave. She replaced me. And she thought she did it so quietly that I'd never discover the truth. But here's the thing about betrayal, it underestimates the very people it wounds. I didn't explode. I didn't shout. I didn't even blame Clara. I thanked her, stood up, and walked out with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Because now I understood everything. Her letter wasn't a confession. It was a justification. Her exit wasn't sudden. It was rehearsed. Her wounds weren't the whole truth. They were the version that painted her as the victim. And her betrayal wasn't accidental. It was intentional. But here's where my subtle vengeance began, not the loud, messy kind. The quiet kind. The kind where you rise so high they wish they never left. The kind where you improve so drastically they become a footnote in your story. The kind where your peace becomes the punishment they never saw coming. As I stepped out of the cafe that day, the sky opened and it began to rain, soft, steady, cleansing. And for the first time since she left, I smiled. Because now I wasn't just healing. I was becoming someone she would eventually regret losing. People think revenge is about hurting someone back. I used to think that too. But real revenge, the kind that hits the hardest, isn't loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't involve shouting or slamming doors or exposing secrets. Real revenge is becoming untouchable. And that's exactly what I did. After learning the truth, her coworker, her planned escape, her carefully constructed victim narrative, something inside me focused. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting to her. I was building me. And that's how the rise began. I fixed my life in ways she never expected. The first thing I did was clean the house top to bottom. Not because her absence hurt me, but because I wanted to remove the version of myself that had existed with her. No more shadows. No more lingering scents. No more echoes of conversations that no longer mattered. It felt symbolic, like clearing out dead air to make space for something living. Then I opened a separate bank account and redirected my salary. A clean start, financially and emotionally. I wasn't going to let the past bleed into my future. Next came the physical rise. I joined a gym. Not for vanity, but for discipline. I started running every morning before work. I cooked my meals. I slept better. I breathed better. I lived better. In 6 months, I lost weight, gained muscle, and woke up every day with clarity instead of emotional clutter. People at work noticed. Friends noticed. And that mattered more than I expected. I went from barely surviving at work to dominating my field. I took certification courses. I volunteered for challenging assignments. I pitched an idea in a meeting that eventually got approved. Promotion followed. Then a raise. Then opportunities. It wasn't luck. It was focused energy she once drained from me. And funny enough, the more I rose, the more I realized how much I had sacrificed just to keep our marriage afloat. I wasn't just recovering. I was reinventing. Then I deleted her number. It took me 2 years to do that. That was my small, symbolic victory. I didn't need closure. I didn't need explanations. I didn't need the "I'm sorry" that people always assume comes later. Her departure wasn't a wound anymore. It was motivation. Deleting her number was like deleting the last trace of the man who allowed himself to be blindsided. I didn't block her, blocking shows emotion. I simply erased her existence from my phone. My peace didn't need barriers. It needed accuracy. Finally, came the moment I knew I had won. The third year after she left, I posted a simple photo online. Nothing flashy. Just me standing outside the company building after receiving my promotion letter. No long caption. Just, grateful. I didn't tag anyone. I wasn't trying to attract attention. But people talk. Friends talk. And photos travel. Less than a week later, a number popped up on my phone, unknown. I didn't pick up. A minute later, a text came through, "Ethan, it's me, Maria. Please call me." I stared at the message, emotionless. The irony was almost poetic. I didn't have the number saved, but I recognized the desperation. I didn't reply. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I owe her nothing, not even a word. And that silence, that became the sweetest, most subtle revenge of all. Because I didn't need to hurt her. I just needed to outgrow her. And I did. Completely. In fact, by the time she tried to come back into my life, I had already outgrown the memory of her. But her attempted return, her reasons, her real regrets, her unraveling, that's the part you need to hear next. I always thought closure was a conversation. A final talk. A last explanation. Two people sitting across from each other, unpacking emotions and trying to understand what went wrong. But I learned something far more powerful. Closure is not something someone gives you. Closure is who you become. And by the time she came back, I had already closed the chapter without her. It happened on a quiet Sunday. I was leaving the gym, sweat still clinging to my skin, body feeling light and strong in a way I hadn't felt in years. As I walked toward my car, I heard someone call my name. Soft. Cautious. Almost afraid. I turned, and there she was. Maria. The woman who slipped out of my life like a thief in the night. The woman who left a letter instead of a conversation. The woman who replaced me long before she walked out. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Her confidence was gone. Her glow was dimmed. Her new life, clearly, hadn't turned out the way she planned. She stood there in jeans, an oversized sweater, and a face that carried both guilt and exhaustion. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. Silence, once again, did my work for me. She swallowed nervously. I didn't know where else to find you. I raised an eyebrow. Well, you found me. I replied. She nodded, eyes softening. You look different. I know. She flinched at the bluntness. For years, she had been used to a softer version of me. A version that soothed, adapted, apologized even when I wasn't wrong. That man was gone. She hesitated, then said the words I knew were coming, I made a mistake. I almost laughed, not cruelly, but in disbelief. A mistake. 7 years together. Months of planning her escape. Secret emotional affairs. A rehearsed exit. A 5-page letter blaming me for everything. And she called it a mistake. I didn't respond, so she kept going. I thought he was what I needed. But it wasn't real. He said things, made promises, and I don't know. I guess I was confused. Confused. That was her defense. The subtle vengeance inside me, quiet, controlled, powerful, waited for the right moment. "Why are you here?" I asked. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. "Because you're the only person who ever truly loved me." The irony was almost poetic. She wanted the stability back. The comfort. The version of me who would meet her halfway. But I wasn't him anymore. I stepped closer, not angrily, but with the calmness of someone who has already won. "Maria," I said quietly, "you didn't leave because you stopped loving me. You left because you thought you found something better. You gambled. And you lost." She shook her head, crying now. "Ethan, please. I want us back. I want to fix things." I looked at her, truly looked at her, and realized something freeing. There was nothing left in her for me. And nothing left in me that belonged to her. I let out a slow, steady breath. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore. But I'm done." A tear rolled down her cheek. "You're choosing to let go?" she asked. I shook my head gently. "No. I already let go." Her face crumpled. My calmness hurt her more than any anger could have. Because the truth she never expected, the truth that stung the deepest, was this: I didn't want her back. Not even a little. She tried one more time, voice trembling. "Can we at least talk? Maybe get coffee?" "No," I said simply. Not loud. Not harsh. Just definite. The strongest no of my entire life. She nodded slowly, understanding finally settling into her bones. She walked away with her shoulders heavy, her steps slow, her entire world rearranged. I watched her go without emotion. Because this wasn't a loss for me. It was a confirmation. That the man she left behind had died the same day our love did. And the man who stood here now, stronger, grounded, unbreakable, had no room for someone who couldn't see his worth the first time around. As I got into my car, a quiet sense of victory washed over me. Not triumph over her. Triumph over myself. Over who I used to be. Over the pain I survived. Over the life I rebuilt from ashes. And as I pulled out of the parking lot, I said it out loud, not for her, but for me. The day she left wasn't the worst day of my life. It was the day my life finally began. The end.